The Xylar Empire's warships darkened Earth skies like artificial thunderclouds, their angular silhouettes casting long shadows across cities worldwide. Each vessel bristled with weapons systems that seemed to defy known physics, their whole designs speaking of a civilization millennia beyond humanity's technological grasp. The invasion fleet had arrived without warning, positioning itself in perfect strategic formation around Earth's major population centers within minutes. Admiral Zorgith stood before the tactical hologram on his command bridge, his scaled fingers tracing the outline of the pitiful blue planet. His species had evolved as apex predators on a world 3 times as dense as Earth, giving him and his kind a naturally imposing physique. Thick exoskeletal plating, multiple sets of manipulator appendages, and eyes adapted to track prey across vast distances. 6 campaigns, 17 worlds conquered, countless species subjugated. This was merely another routine expansion for the Empire. Primitive, he remarked to his senior staff, gesturing at the scrolling data about Earth's technological capabilities. They've barely mastered rudimentary space travel. Their global communication systems rely on crude satellites. Their weapons are kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. He allowed himself a characteristic clicking sound that passed for laughter among his kind. And the most delicious part? They're divided. Thousands of separate governments, ideologies, and militaries with minimal coordination. The intelligence officer, Vex, nodded her crested head. Their planet is in crisis. Climate instability, resource depletion, regional conflicts. Our analysts predict minimal coordinated resistance. Zorgith's mouth parts curved into what humans might interpret as a smile, though on his alien face, it appeared far more predatory. Then let us begin with the standard protocol. Disable their communications, destroy their energy infrastructure, and deploy ground forces to secure the primary urban centers. I expect capitulation within 72 hours. The initial strike was surgical and overwhelming by design. Across the globe, satellites silently failed as Xylar energy weapons overloaded their systems. Power stations exploded in spectacular cascades of electricity before going dark. Critical telecommunications nodes were targeted with pinpoint accuracy, throwing entire continents into information blackouts. As panic spread, the drop ships descended, deploying elite Xylar shock troops into strategic locations. Commander Krell, leading the ground assault on what humans called North America, had expected to encounter organized resistance from the planet's military forces. What he found instead both confused and irritated him. Sir, we've secured the government district as planned, but we're encountering unusual resistance patterns, he reported to Zorgith via secure channel. Explain, Zorgith demanded. It's not their military, sir. At least, not their regular forces. Krell ducked as a makeshift explosive detonated nearby. It's civilians. Untrained, uncoordinated, but persistent. In the background of the transmission, Zorgith could hear the unmistakable sounds of combat. A subordinate officer shouted something about another ambush. Civilians? Zorgith's tone was dismissive. Handle it, Commander. These are the expected death throes of conquest. But as hours turned to days, the death throes showed no signs of subsiding. In fact, they were intensifying. Across the world, the Xylar ground forces found themselves engaged not in straightforward military confrontations, but in exhausting, unpredictable guerrilla warfare. In the ruins of Seoul, a group of teenage gamers repurposed commercial drones, fitting them with improvised explosives to harass Xylar patrols. Outside Mumbai, farmers used their intimate knowledge of irrigation canals to flood areas where the invaders had established forward operating bases. In the Amazon, indigenous tribes with centuries of experience moving invisibly through dense jungle became lethal shadows, striking Xylar units and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Most concerning to Krell was the speed at which these primitives adapted. Within 48 hours, human resistance fighters had begun using captured Xylar communication devices against them, broadcasting false orders and creating confusion in their ranks. 72 hours in, they discovered that household microwave emitters, modified and amplified, could disrupt certain Xylar sensor technologies. These are not the actions of an uncoordinated species, Krell insisted during his daily briefing with Zorgith. I've witnessed conquest on 7 worlds, Admiral. This is different. Zorgith's patience was wearing thin. You're allowing scattered resistance to color your assessment, Commander. The humans have no centralized defense. Their militaries are in disarray. Our hold on their major city strengthens by the hour. With respect, sir, our casualties are mounting. 3 transport ships lost yesterday alone. Supply lines under constant attack. And there's something else. Krell hesitated. Some of the technology we're encountering, it doesn't match our intelligence reports. I've seen weapons that shouldn't exist given their development timeline. Document these anomalies and continue the operation. Zorgith ordered, his tone final. Increase orbital bombardment of suspected resistance strongholds. The escalation was immediate. Xylar warships rained destruction from above, leveling entire districts where resistance was strongest. The human death toll soared into the millions. Yet somehow, impossibly, the resistance intensified. In the burning remains of Berlin, Eva Kraus had once been nothing more dramatic than a museum curator specializing in military history. Now, she led what had become known as the City Ghosts, a resistance cell of 300 fighters who had transformed the ruined urban landscape into a lethal maze for Xylar forces. They think they know cities, she told her lieutenants, her voice hoarse from smoke inhalation, her face streaked with soot and blood. But they don't understand human architecture. We've been building defensible spaces since the first walls went up in Jericho. This is our element. Her group had become specialists in using the urban environment itself as a weapon. Collapsed buildings became ambush points. Subway tunnels served as both escape routes and death traps for pursuing Xylar troops. Even the rubble was weaponized, carefully balanced to trigger avalanches when enemy patrols passed below. But Eva knew they were fighting a losing battle. For every Xylar soldier they killed, Timor seemed to take its place. For every human victory, there were a dozen massacres. She lost count of the nights she spent staring at the ceiling of whatever temporary shelter they'd secured, wondering how long they could hold out. The turning point came unexpectedly. A Xylar patrol in the outskirts of what had once been Paris was ambushed by a combination of local resistance fighters and what appeared to be a small unit of actual military personnel operating sophisticated equipment. In the ensuing firefight, 3 Xylar soldiers were captured alive, an unprecedented event. Instead of executing the prisoners, the human fighters provided medical treatment for their wounds. They recorded footage using the Xylar soldiers' own helmet cameras, showing the fierce fighting, the determination of ordinary people defending their homes, children passing ammunition to adults, elderly engineers repurposing civilian technology into defensive systems. Then, the captured soldiers were placed on a damaged Xylar transport vessel, along with the recorded footage and a crude audio message in broken Xylar language. This is only our warm-up. When the vessel and its mysterious cargo arrived at the Xylar command ship, Zorgith was furious. Propaganda, he declared, after reviewing the materials. A desperate attempt to demoralize us. He ordered the returned soldiers placed in isolation, suspecting some form of human manipulation or brainwashing. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Among the Xylar forces, whispers began to spread. If untrained human civilians could cause this much damage, what would happen if their actual military emerged? Were the nuclear weapons that intelligence had confirmed existed? Why hadn't the humans deployed their most destructive capabilities? Krell could no longer ignore the discrepancies. During a routine security sweep in what remained of Sydney, his forces encountered unexplainable technology, a defensive perimeter that seemed to selectively phase in and out of detectability. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the Xylar database. When his team finally breached the perimeter, they found an abandoned facility with evidence of equipment removal. Recent, hasty, but methodical. "There's something here we're not seeing," he reported to his direct superior, deliberately avoiding Zorgotha's dismissive attention. The resistance is too coordinated. Their adaptation rate exceeds evolutionary parameters, and we're finding technology that doesn't align with their documented capabilities. Meanwhile, the human toll was catastrophic. Cities lay in ruins. Infrastructure collapsed. Food supplies dwindled. Refugee crises erupted across continents as people fled the heaviest conflict zones. Yet even in this devastation, the human spirit showed an unexpected resilience. In a makeshift hospital beneath the ruins of London, Dr. Sarah Patel worked without sleep for 48 hours straight, treating wounded resistance fighters and civilian casualties alike. When a wall collapsed, nearly crushing her, she barely paused to brush off the dust before returning to a patient's side. "Why do you continue?" asked a wounded fighter, watching her work. Despite her own obvious exhaustion and injuries, "They're too powerful. We can't win." She didn't look up from the wound she was suturing. "Because surrender isn't in our nature. Because every hour we hold out is another hour we're free. And because," she added with unexpected fierceness, "they haven't seen what we're really capable of yet." Her words would prove prophetic. 3 weeks into the invasion, the stalemate was beginning to concern the Xylar High Command back on their homeworld. Zorgotha's reports grew increasingly defensive, emphasizing territorial gains while downplaying the unrelenting resistance and mounting casualties. Pressure mounted for a decisive victory or a strategic reassessment. It was in this atmosphere of growing tension that a brilliant intelligence analyst named Thex approached Zorgoth with a disturbing theory. Young for her position and known for unconventional thinking, she had been compiling anomalous data points from across the invasion forces' reports. "Admiral, I believe we may have catastrophically misunderstood the situation on Earth," she began, her voice steady despite the career-ending risk she was taking by contradicting the official assessment. Zorgotha's irritation was palpable. "Another conspiracy theory, analyst? I have a war to win. Sir, please examine this data. Patterns of resistance that shouldn't be possible without central coordination. Technology appearing and disappearing from the battlefield. Energy signatures that exceed known human capabilities." She projected a holographic display showing overlapping anomalies. "Most importantly, where's their nuclear arsenal? Our intelligence confirmed extensive stockpiles, yet they haven't deployed a single warhead, even in the face of certain defeat." "Your point, analyst?" Zorgoth growled. "Sir, I believe what we're facing, this global guerrilla resistance, may not be their primary defense force at all." Her voice dropped lower. "What if it's a screen? Or worse, a test? A way to study our tactics while wearing us down?" Zorgoth stared at her, mandibles twitching with barely controlled anger. She delivered her final assessment with quiet dread. "Admiral, if everything we've faced so far has been merely their civilians, are you saying that wasn't their full army?" The question hung in the air, a terrible possibility that none of the senior staff wanted to contemplate. Before Zorgoth could respond, alarms blared throughout the command ship. The tactical display erupted with new contacts appearing seemingly from nowhere, emerging from the dark side of Earth's moon, rising from the depths of the oceans, decloaking in the asteroid belt. Human warships, hundreds of them. Not the primitive space vessels their intelligence had documented, but angular, lethal craft of advanced design. They moved with impossible precision, their weapons systems charging with energy signatures that rivaled the Xylar fleet's own capabilities. "Impossible," Zorgoth whispered. The first strike came with devastating efficiency. A Xylar supply depot in orbit over Earth simply vanished in a pinpoint energy discharge that somehow bypassed its shields entirely. Simultaneously, 3 Xylar destroyer-class vessels reported critical systems failures before all communication ceased. On the tactical display, a symbol appeared, projected across all Xylar communication channels, a stylized spear and shield. "This is Warlord," came a voice speaking perfect Xylar language. "Commander of Project Ares, you have violated sovereign human space. You have massacred our civilians. You have witnessed our people's resolve. Now you will face humanity's true defensive capability. Across Earth, the Resistance fighters received new communications, new supplies, new hope. Advanced weapons materialized in their hands. Tactical information flooded their makeshift networks. And overhead, the battle for orbital supremacy had begun in earnest. The revelation struck the Xylar invasion force like a physical blow. There had been a human military all along, but not the divided, primitive forces they had anticipated. Project Ares was something else entirely, a unified, hidden, technological superpower that had remained concealed until the moment of its choosing. In Berlin, Eva and her city ghosts stared in awe as sleek aircraft with impossible maneuverability engaged Xylar ships directly above the city. The craft bore no national insignia, no identifying marks except the same spear and shield symbol that was now appearing on Resistance communications. They waited, Eva realized aloud. They let us fight the ground war while they prepared. Her second-in-command pointed to an incoming transmission on their jury-rigged communication system. We're getting new orders. Coordinates, target information. They're organizing all Resistance cells globally. In orbit, Zorgith watched in mounting horror as his carefully positioned fleet was systematically dismantled. The human vessels employed tactics his commanders had never encountered, using short-range teleportation technology to bypass shields, deploying autonomous drone swarms that sacrifice themselves to disrupt weapon systems, and most alarmingly, demonstrating intimate knowledge of Xylar ships' vulnerable points that should have been absolute military secrets. They studied us, Thek said quietly, standing beside him on the command deck. Every skirmish with the Resistance fighters, every engagement, they were gathering data, analyzing our capabilities and limitations. Krell's situation on the ground had deteriorated from difficult to desperate. His forces, cut off from orbital support and resupply, found themselves hunted by both the newly empowered civilian Resistance fighters and specialized Ares strike teams that seemed to materialize from nowhere. During a fighting retreat through the ruins of Manhattan, Krell's command unit was surrounded. He expected execution when captured. Instead, he found himself face to face with Eva Kraus. "You're not what I expected," she said, studying the alien commander with academic interest. "Nor you," he replied. "Your species. We severely underestimated you." "A common mistake," she acknowledged, "made by conquerors throughout human history." She led him through a series of underground passages to a facility that couldn't possibly exist according to Xylar intelligence. A massive command center hewn from the bedrock beneath the city, untouched by the orbital bombardment, humming with advanced technology and populated by a seamless integration of military personnel and civilian Resistance fighters. On massive screens, Krell watched as his Empire's invasion force disintegrated. Ares warships pursued retreating Xylar vessels beyond Mars. Specialized strike teams systematically liberated occupied territory. The Resistance, now armed with Ares-provided weapons, cleared remaining Xylar ground forces from city after city. "Why show me this?" he asked. Eva's expression was grim. "Because you're going to survive to report back. Someone needs to explain to your Empire exactly what happened here." In orbit, Zorgith faced the most difficult decision of his storied military career. The invasion was lost. That much was undeniable. His fleet reduced to barely 30% of its original strength, with more ships being lost by the hour. The Xylar High Command demanded explanations he couldn't provide. "Admiral," his executive officer said quietly, "we must consider withdrawal. We cannot hold this position." Zorgith stared at the tactical display, watching another destroyer succumb to the human onslaught. "How?" he asked, more to himself than his officer. "How do we not know?" A transmission cut through his introspection, direct and unauthorized. Warlord, the mysterious commander of Project Ares, appeared on his personal channel. "Admiral Zorgith," the figure said, features obscured by an advanced battle helmet, voice modulated. "Your invasion fleet is defeated. Your ground forces are being eliminated or captured. You have two options: complete destruction or immediate withdrawal from the Sol system." Zorgatha's pride warred with his tactical assessment. "You deceived us," he accused. "You hid your true capabilities. We protected our greatest assets until they were needed," Warlord corrected. "A strategy as old as warfare itself. Your empire's arrogance blinded you to the possibility that a primitive species might have learned the value of strategic deception." The human commander leaned closer to the transmission pickup. "I suggest you leave while you still have ships capable of the journey home. And take this message to your high command. The era of Xylar expansion ends here. This is Earth's first and final warning." The retreat was announced within the hour. What should have been an orderly strategic withdrawal devolved into near panic as Ares' forces harried the departing ships, seemingly more interested in demonstrating their complete technological superiority than in maximizing Xylar casualties. Ares' vessels shadowed the retreating fleet to the very edge of the solar system before breaking off, a clear message that they could have pursued the destruction further if they'd chosen to. On Earth, the recovery began amidst the rubble. The toll had been staggering. Major cities in ruins, millions dead, infrastructure shattered, entire regions rendered temporarily uninhabitable. Yet alongside the grief and devastation ran a current of fierce pride and unity unprecedented in human history. Eva's city Go's transitioned from guerrilla fighters to recovery specialists, their intimate knowledge of the ruined urban landscape proving invaluable for rescue operations. She found herself working alongside Ares personnel, finally learning the truth about humanity's secret defenders. "It began decades ago," explained an Ares commander named Jackson, as they coordinated search efforts in what remained of the Berlin subway system. "When we detected the first Xylar probes at the edge of our solar system, most governments dismissed them as natural phenomena. A small group of scientists and military leaders from across the world recognized the truth. They were reconnaissance devices. So Project Ares was born," Eva surmised. "A multinational defense force hidden from the public?" Jackson nodded. "Hidden from everyone, including most of our own governments. We constructed facilities in the most inaccessible locations: deep ocean trenches, lunar caverns, asteroid hollows. We adapted and reverse-engineered technologies from crashed alien crafts that official channels had dismissed as conspiracy theories. We prepared for a war we hoped would never come. But when it did come," Eva pressed, "why wait? Why allow the invasion to proceed when you could have stopped it immediately? Do you know how many died while you were hiding?" Jackson's expression darkened with what appeared to be genuine remorse. "That decision will haunt us forever. But strategically, it was necessary. We needed to understand their full capabilities, their tactical approaches, their weaknesses. If we had revealed ourselves too soon and failed to defeat them completely, Earth would have had no second chance." Meanwhile, Commander Krell found himself in the unprecedented position of providing intelligence to his former enemies. With his empire in retreat and his former loyalties shattered by the brutality he had witnessed, he made the decision to cooperate. "The Xylar will return," he warned a joint council of Ares commanders and civilian resistance leaders. "Not immediately. Your victory was too complete, the humiliation too profound. But eventually, with greater numbers, better intelligence. We'll be ready," Warlord stated. The mysterious leader of Project Ares had yet to reveal their identity publicly, remaining helmeted even in secure facilities, voice always modulated, gender and ethnic origins obscured. Some speculated that Warlord might not even be human, but rather an advanced artificial intelligence, a rumor Ares neither confirmed nor denied. In the months that followed, Earth transformed. The technological advancements that had been sequestered within Project Ares gradually filtered into the recovery effort. Cities were rebuilt with materials that could withstand orbital bombardment. Global defense systems were established openly rather than in secret. The distinction between civilian and military blurred as the entire population underwent basic training for the next invasion, a prospect that many accepted as inevitable. Admiral Zorgath, returning to the Xylar homeworld with less than a third of his invasion fleet, faced the consequences of failure. The Xylar High Command, initially preparing for his execution, paused when they reviewed the complete battle records. This defeat was not due to incompetence. The arch-strategist concluded reluctantly. It was due to unprecedented deception on a planetary scale. These humans concealed capabilities that our best intelligence failed to detect. The story of Earth's resistance and the shocking revelation of its hidden military spread throughout the Xylar Empire like wildfire. What began as an embarrassing military setback evolved into something approaching a cultural myth. The primitive species that hid an army powerful enough to humble the mighty Xylar. In military academies, the question, "You mean that wasn't their full army?" became shorthand for catastrophic strategic underestimation. More disturbingly for the Empire, whispers of Earth's victory reached the subjugated species on dozens of conquered worlds. Where resistance had been crushed into hopelessness, a dangerous emotion began to flicker again: inspiration. One standard year after the failed invasion, a long-range Ares reconnaissance satellite detected significant Xylar fleet movements in a distant sector of the galaxy. The images were brought directly to Warlord. "They're gathering a larger force," observed the intelligence officer presenting the findings. "Multiple battle groups. Capital ships we've never seen before." Warlord studied the data in silence, then looked up at a star map displaying the vast gulf of space between Earth and the assembling Xylar Armada. "Establish additional sensor networks in these sectors," Warlord ordered, marking transit routes the Xylar might use. "Accelerate the Jupiter shipyard's production schedule, and send word to our deep cover operatives in Xylar territory. We need more detailed intelligence on their new weapon systems." "Should we inform the civilian government?" asked the officer. Warlord considered this briefly. "Yes. The time for secrets between us is past. Earth must stand united, military and civilian, as one force." As the officer departed, Warlord remained alone with the star map, contemplating the vast darkness between worlds and the inevitable conflict it would soon carry. The battle for Earth had been won. The war for humanity's survival was just beginning. In the ruins of what had once been Tokyo, a group of children played among carefully preserved rubble, a memorial to the invasion. They enacted their own version of the war, taking turns playing humans and Xylar. But in their game, the Xylar always lost, and the humans always saw tomorrow. Overhead, visible even in daylight, new defense platforms glinted in the sunlight. Silent guardians prepared for a threat most hoped would never return. Earth had changed forever, transformed from an isolated world into a fortress among the stars, its people united by the shared experience of near extinction and unexpected victory. And somewhere in the depths of space, a Xylar admiral looked toward Earth's distant sun and remembered the most terrifying revelation of his long military career: that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that allows you to believe you're winning, until it's too late.